The pain was a familiar chord, one that resonated deep in the hollows of her bones. Ilara stood by the floor-to-ceiling windows of the gala, the city lights of Seoul a sprawling galaxy of indifferent stars below. The emerald silk of her gown was a cage of her own making, a beautiful armor for a battle she was profoundly tired of fighting. For 6 years, Marcus had been the architect of her suffering, and tonight, he was being celebrated for a building she had designed in the lonely pre-dawn hours while he slept the sleep of the undeserving. Her name was nowhere on the blueprints. Her soul, however, was in every line, every curve, every impossible cantilever of the skyline apex tower. She did not want to be here. Every smile was a Herculean effort, every polite nod a drain on a reservoir of energy that was already critically low. She had left him 3 months ago. A quiet departure, packing only what she could carry in 2 suitcases, leaving behind the ghost of a life she had tried so desperately to build. She had thought distance would be a salve, that the silence of her small new apartment would be a sanctuary. But Marcus was not the kind of man who allowed things to end. He saw endings as an affront to his narrative, a flaw in the story he told himself about his own magnetism and power. He found her, of course. He always did. His voice, a low and menacing rumble, slid into her ear from behind. "There you are. I was wondering where my good luck charm had gotten off to." Ilara did not flinch. She had trained her body not to react, to absorb the impact of his presence like a seawall absorbs a wave. It erodes you over time, but in the moment, you stand. She turned slowly, her expression a carefully constructed mask of neutrality. "Marcus, congratulations on your award." He gave a dismissive wave, his signet ring catching the light. "Our award, darling. You know you're the secret ingredient." He said it with a smile, but his eyes were cold, possessive. He had not updated the file. He was working from a version of her that had never been accurate, a version that mistook her silence for submission. "I was thinking," he continued, his hand landing on the small of her back, a brand of ownership for the whole room to see, "that this foolishness has gone on long enough. Your little holiday is over. It's time to come home." "I am home," she said, her voice quiet but firm as bedrock. "My home, not yours." His smile tightened. It was a predator's smile, all teeth and no warmth. "Don't be difficult, Ilara. You're emotional. You designed a magnificent building and you're feeling sentimental. I get it. But the real world, our world, requires a partnership. My name, your talent. It works." "It works for you," she corrected, shifting her weight just enough to dislodge his hand. "I'm done, Marcus." This was the moment the temperature dropped. The performative charm evaporated, leaving behind the raw, ugly thing she knew so well. His fingers clamped around her arm, his grip a vice. "You don't get to be done," he hissed, his face close to hers. "You have an obligation to me, to the firm. Everything you are is because of me." The lie was so audacious, so complete, that for a moment it stole her breath. She thought about the all-nighters fueled by lukewarm coffee and sheer will. She thought about the models she built with her own hands until her fingers were raw. She thought about the solutions she had whispered to him over the phone when he was floundering in front of a client. She had been the most capable person in every room they had ever been in together, and he had convinced the world she was merely his muse. "Let go of my arm," she said. The words were not a plea. They were a command. His grip tightened, his knuckles white. "You will walk out of here with me. You will get in my car, and you will stop this embarrassing display." His voice was low, but it carried the distinct promise of violence. It was a promise he had kept before. The hand connected with his wrist. It was not her hand. It was larger, masculine, adorned with a simple, heavy gold watch that seemed to absorb the light in the room. The hand did not strike. It simply settled, its presence an undeniable fact. The pressure it applied must have been immense because Marcus's grip on her arm vanished instantly. his fingers flying open as if electrically shocked. Alara looked up. The man was tall, his presence a sudden column of stillness in the swirling chaos of the gala. He was dressed in a charcoal suit so exquisitely tailored it seemed less like clothing and more like a second skin. His face was severe and beautiful, all sharp angles and quiet authority. He was Korean, and his eyes, dark and unreadable, were fixed on Marcus. He did not look angry. He did not look anything at all. It was a terrifying blankness, the kind of calm that precedes a cataclysm. This was Kang Jin-woo, chairman of the Sunhwa Group, a man whose name was spoken in whispers in boardrooms and back alleys alike, a man who built cities and dismantled corporations with the same quiet, unhurried precision. The vibrant hum of the gala had died. Conversations trailed off into silence. The string quartet faltered, a violin screeching into the sudden quiet before it too fell silent. It was the kind of silence that doesn't echo, the kind that settles, heavy as a shroud. All eyes in the vast ballroom, hundreds of them, were fixed on the tableau by the window. The furious, red-faced architect, the woman in the emerald gown, her composure a fragile masterpiece, and the silent, unmoving chairman. Jin-woo had not been part of the conversation. He had been standing several feet away, observing. He was not a man who inserted himself into things. He was a man who ended them. His gaze shifted from Marcus to Alara, a fleeting, almost imperceptible softening in his eyes. It was a look of assessment, of recognition. Then his eyes returned to Marcus, and the coldness was absolute. He spoke, and his voice was not loud, but it cut through the silence like a shard of obsidian. "Take your hand off my architect." The words were simple, declarative. The possessive pronoun hung in the air, a shield and a claim. Marcus, flustered and out of his depth, tried to regain his swagger. "I don't know who you think you are, but this is a private matter between me and my—" Jin-woo did not allow him to finish the word. His thumb applied a point of pressure to a nerve in Marcus's wrist. Marcus gasped, a wet, strangled sound, and stumbled back, clutching his arm. He looked at Jin-woo with a mixture of shock and dawning terror. He was beginning to understand that he had not just made a mistake. He had made a terminal one. "Security," Jin-woo said, still not raising his voice. He did not look around to see if anyone was coming. He did not need to. Two men, identically dressed in dark, severe suits, materialized from the crowd. They moved without wasted motion, their footsteps silent on the polished marble. They flanked Marcus, their presence overwhelming. They were not hotel security. They were something else entirely. "This man is no longer a guest," Jin-woo stated. It was not a request for them to remove him. It was a declaration of a new reality. Marcus sputtered, his arrogance collapsing into panic. "You can't do this. I'm the guest of honor. I won the Pritzker." "You won nothing," Jin-woo replied, his voice flat. "You are a thief, and your time here is over." The security men each took one of Marcus's arms. He struggled for a moment, a pathetic, flailing resistance that only highlighted his powerlessness. He was escorted, not so much walking as being propelled toward the exit. The crowd parted for them like the Red Sea, a silent, collective intake of breath rippling through the room. Marcus's final desperate shout of "Alara" was cut off as the grand doors swung shut behind him. The silence he left behind was even heavier than before. Jin-woo turned his full attention to Alara. The intensity of his gaze was not aggressive, but it was total. He was seeing her, not as a muse, not as an accessory, but as the center of the equation. "Are you all right, Miss Vance?" he asked. His voice was steady as iron wrapped in silk. Alara could only nod, her throat tight. Words felt inadequate, flimsy things in the face of what had just happened. The sheer, effortless display of power was disorienting. He had not shouted. He was not performing. He had simply spoken a new truth into existence, and the world had rearranged itself accordingly. He gestured slightly with his head toward the terrace doors. "Perhaps some fresh air." It was a suggestion, but it carried the weight of a royal decree. She found herself moving, following him out into the cool night. The distant sounds of the city were a balm after the suffocating silence of the ballroom. They stood by the balustrade, the wind gently stirring the silk of her gown. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. He was giving her space to breathe, to reassemble the pieces of her composure. It was a courtesy so profound, so absent from her life with Marcus, that it almost brought tears to her eyes. "Thank you," she finally managed to say, her voice a little shaky. "He put his hands on you," Jinwoo said. It was a statement of fact, but underneath it lay a current of something cold and dangerous. "That is not acceptable." "He's my ex-husband," she offered, as if that explained the ugliness, the ownership in Marcus's actions. "That is irrelevant," Jinwoo replied, turning to face her. The city lights cast his features in sharp relief. "His relationship to you does not grant him rights. It grants him responsibilities, which he has clearly abandoned." He paused, his gaze searching her face. "I have been following your work for some time, Miss Vance. Your real work." Ilara's heart stuttered. "I don't know what you mean." "The preliminary sketches for the Yokohama waterfront project, the revised structural plans for the Dubai Aerotropolis, and, of course, the Skyline Apex Tower." He listed them calmly. "Your design language is unmistakable. It is bold, lyrical, and structurally audacious. It is also completely absent from any project Marcus Thorne was involved with before he met you." The breath left her body in a rush. To be seen. To be truly, accurately seen. It was a terrifying and exhilarating sensation. For years, she had been a ghostwriter for her own life. Now, this man, this stranger, was reading her hidden signature on the skyline of the world. "Oh, how?" she whispered. "I make it my business to know who the brilliant people are," he said simply. "Sunhua Group is breaking ground on our new global headquarters next year. It will be the most significant architectural project of the decade. I want the person who designed the Skyline Apex to be the lead architect. I want you, Miss Vance." It was too much. The assault, the rescue, this staggering, life-altering offer. Her mind struggled to keep pace. "Mr. Kang, I appreciate the sentiment, but my name isn't... I'm not..." "You are not officially credited," he finished for her. "I am aware. That is a problem I intend to solve. Marcus Thorne will no longer be an obstacle, to you or to anyone else." There was a finality in his tone that was absolute. He was not just offering her a job, he was offering her a fortress. He was offering her the one thing she had craved for years: safety. His driver was waiting for them at a private exit, a sleek black sedan humming silently at the curb. Jinwoo opened the door for her himself. As she slid onto the cool leather of the back seat, she felt a profound sense of dislocation, as if she had stepped out of her life and into a different one entirely. The car pulled away from the curb with impossible smoothness. "Where are we going?" she asked, her voice small in the vast, quiet interior of the car. "To a place where you will be safe," Jinwoo answered, his eyes on the rain-streaked window. "And from where you can begin your work, if you choose to accept my offer." The penthouse was less an apartment and more a kingdom in the sky. It occupied the entire top 2 floors of a residential tower that Jinwoo's company owned. The design was minimalist, all clean lines, dark wood, and glass, but the view was maximalist, a 360-degree panorama of Seoul's glittering expanse. It was a beautiful, sterile space, a gilded cage waiting for an occupant. Ilara walked through the silent rooms, her heels clicking softly on the marble floors. She felt the fear, a familiar ghost at her shoulder, the fear of dependency. She had just escaped one powerful man who sought to control her. Was she walking willingly into the arms of another? But this felt different. Marcus's power was loud, performative, and hollow. It was built on theft and bluster. Jinwoo's power was the opposite. It was deep, quiet, structural. It was the power of the foundation, not the facade. He had not offered her a relationship. He had offered her a contract. He had not called her beautiful, he had called her brilliant. She turned to find him watching her, his expression patient. He had not followed her through the space, but had remained by the entrance, giving her the freedom to explore it, to claim it, or reject it on her own terms. "I accept the commission," she said, her voice finding its strength. "On several conditions. I want a formal contract, with my name, Ilara Vance, as the sole lead architect. I want full creative control, and I require my own support team, which I will select myself." A flicker of something, respect, perhaps amusement, passed through his eyes. "Of course. My legal team will have a contract drawn up for your review by morning. Your control will be absolute. Provide my assistant with a list of your desired team members. We will make them offers they cannot refuse." He paused. "There is one other thing. Your security. Until the situation with Mr. Thorne is fully resolved, my team will be posted here. They will be discreet. You will not see them unless you need them. This is not negotiable." The protector. The quiet sovereign. He was building walls around her, but for the first time she felt they were to keep threats out, not to keep her in. She gave a single, decisive nod. Acceptable. The days that followed were a blur of focused, exhilarating work. Ilara had never felt so creatively unleashed. The resources of the Sunhua Group were limitless. Any material, any consultant, any technology she requested was provided without question. She assembled a small, brilliant team, starting with Anya, her fiercely loyal friend from her old firm, who quit the moment she received the offer, cackling with glee over the phone. Jin Woo was a constant, quiet presence. He did not hover or interfere. He would simply appear in the studio she had set up in the penthouse's second floor, a cup of tea in his hand for her, and he would watch her work. He studied her blueprints and 3D models with the same intensity he had studied her that night at the gala. He asked intelligent, incisive questions that pushed her to refine her own ideas. They rarely spoke of anything personal. Their conversations were about tensile strength, light distribution, and the poetics of space. It was a language they both understood intimately. In the shared silence of creation, a bond was forming. It was not a bond of passion, but of mutual recognition. A slow, respectful partnership built on competence and safety. Meanwhile, Mr. Choi, Jin Woo's ever-present and eerily efficient assistant, worked silently in the background. Ilara would occasionally hear snippets of his phone calls, quiet and clipped conversations in Korean. Acquire the holding company. Purchase the debt from the bank? Yes, all of it. He was a ghost, dismantling Marcus's world brick by invisible brick. Marcus, for his part, was living in a state of arrogant delusion. After being unceremoniously thrown out of the gala, he had convinced himself it was a misunderstanding, a power play by a rival. He could not conceive of a world where he was not the protagonist. He believed Ilara was merely hiding, playing hard to get. "Give her 3 days," he'd boasted to a colleague. "She'll be begging to come back. She can't create without me." When 3 days turned into a week, then 2, his delusion curdled into rage. He made his fatal miscalculation. Convinced he could intimidate her back into submission, he filed a frivolous, high-profile lawsuit against her and the Sunhua Group, claiming intellectual property theft for the design of the new headquarters, a design the world had not even seen yet. When Ilara saw the news alert, a cold dread washed over her. It was his ultimate move, to trap her in a public lie, to force her to defend her own genius against his fraudulent claim. She was standing in the studio, the legal document trembling in her hand, when Jinwoo walked in. He looked at the tablet in her hand, then at her face. "It's handled," he said. "Handled? He's accusing me of stealing my own work. He's trying to ruin me, to ruin this project." "He is trying," Jinwoo corrected gently. "He will not succeed. He has merely stepped into a trap he does not know exists. Let him think he has the advantage. It will make his fall that much more complete." He took the tablet from her hand and set it aside. "Now, show me the revisions you made to the west facade." His calmness was an anchor in her storm. She took a deep breath and turned back to her work, trusting in the quiet, structural power she was only just beginning to understand. A week later, a special visitor was announced. Mr. Choi informed her, with a reverence that bordered on fear, that Chairman Kang's mother would be arriving to take tea with her that afternoon. Alara felt a fresh wave of anxiety. Mrs. Park was the grand matriarch of the Kang family, a woman of immense traditional power and influence. Her approval, Alara knew, was everything. She dressed carefully, choosing a simple but elegant cream-colored dress. She met the old woman in the penthouse's small internal garden, a serene space of raked sand and carefully placed stones. Mrs. Park was tiny, a bird-like woman with eyes that held the wisdom and sharpness of 1,000 years. She was dressed in a traditional hanbok of the deepest indigo. She assessed Alara from head to toe, her gaze missing nothing. They sat opposite each other at a low table. A maidservant performed the tea ceremony in complete silence. Mrs. Park did not speak until the first cup had been poured and tasted. "My son does not bring women into his life," the old woman said, her voice surprisingly strong. "He brings partners, assets, weapons. I have been trying to determine which you are." Alara met her gaze without flinching. "I am an architect, madam. I am here to build your son a tower." A slow smile creased Mrs. Park's ancient face. "A good answer, direct. You do not flatter. You do not posture." She took another sip of tea. "I have seen the man who troubles you. I saw him on the news. He has a loud voice and weak eyes, the eyes of a man who takes things. My son has the eyes of a man who keeps things." She looked at Alara pointedly. "You have the eyes of a woman who builds them. It is a much harder thing to do. To build." They spoke for over an hour. Mrs. Park asked nothing about her relationship with Jin Woo. Instead, she asked about Alara's childhood, about the first time she knew she wanted to build things, about the pressures of being a black woman in an industry dominated by white and Asian men. Alara found herself speaking with a candor she rarely allowed herself. This old woman did not want platitudes, she wanted truth. As the visit concluded, they both stood. Several of Jin Woo's men, including the head of his security detail, stood silently by the garden entrance, having been present for the entire meeting. Mrs. Park looked at Alara, a deep and profound respect in her eyes. Then she did something that made the air in the room crackle with shock. She placed her hands together, brought them to her chest, and gave Alara a full, formal bow, a bow of deep, unequivocal respect, the kind of bow one gives to a revered elder or a master of their craft. The security men stiffened, their eyes wide with confusion. Their world had a strict, unshakable hierarchy, and the chairman's mother was at its absolute apex. For her to bow to this foreign woman was an event so far outside their understanding, it was like seeing the sun rise in the west. They looked to their boss for a cue, for some sign of how to react. Jin Woo had entered the room moments before, standing in the doorway to escort his mother out. He had seen the entire exchange, and while his men were reeling in confusion, he stood perfectly still. His face was calm, his posture relaxed. He did not react because there was nothing to react to. His mother was simply acknowledging a truth he had already recognized on his own. In his mind, Ilara had been worthy of that bow from the very beginning. His stillness was not confusion, it was confirmation. He saw her correctly. His mother, the wisest person he knew, now saw her correctly too. The rest of the world would simply have to catch up. The bow, and Jin Woo's silent affirmation of it, changed something within Alara. A final brittle layer of insecurity fell away. She was not a project to be saved. She was not a victim to be sheltered. She was an artist, a master of her craft, recognized as an equal by the only two people in this new world whose opinions truly mattered. The strength she had always possessed now had a foundation of external validation to stand upon. It made her invincible. The Sunhua Group's official project announcement was scheduled to take place at the National Museum of Modern and Contemporary Art. It was a massive event, a convergence of media, finance, and politics. Alara knew Marcus would see it as his last, best chance to create a public spectacle. She was not afraid. She was ready. She chose her armor for this final battle with care. A dress of architecturally precise black crepe with a single dramatic slash of white at the collar. It was severe, elegant, and uncompromising. As she stood beside Jinwoo in the moments before they went on stage, he looked at her, a rare, small smile touching his lips. "You look formidable," he said. "I feel formidable," she replied, and for the first time it was the complete truth. The event was proceeding smoothly. The preliminary digital renderings of the tower, unveiled on a massive screen, drew gasps of admiration from the crowd. The Sunhua beacon, as it was to be called, was a masterpiece of twisting, crystalline forms that seemed to defy gravity. It was her vision, pure and undiluted. As Jinwoo was speaking, detailing the financial and cultural significance of the project, a commotion erupted at the back of the hall. Shouts, the sound of a scuffle, and then, breaking through the security line, came Marcus. He was disheveled, his eyes wild with desperation. He had lost weight, and his expensive suit hung on him like a shroud. He looked like a man who had been hollowed out from the inside. "Lies!" he screamed, stumbling forward, his voice cracking with hysteria. "It's all lies." The security team, Jinwoo's men, moved to intercept him, but Jinwoo held up a single hand and they froze in place. He wanted this to happen. He wanted the confrontation to be public. He turned to Marcus, his expression one of mild curiosity, as if observing a curious insect. Marcus pointed a trembling finger at Alara. "She stole it! She stole everything from me! That design is mine. She was my assistant, my muse. She has an obligation to me. She is nothing without my name." The reporters in the front row surged forward, cameras flashing, microphones extended. This was a scandal far more interesting than a new building. The room buzzed with a vicious, electric energy. Alara stood her ground. She did not speak. She did not need to. This was no longer her fight to win. It had already been won in quiet rooms and through silent acquisitions weeks ago. She looked at Marcus, not with hatred, but with a kind of clinical pity. He was a ghost, haunting a life that had long since moved on without him. Jinwoo stepped to the podium, his calm a stark contrast to Marcus's frantic rage. He did not address Marcus directly. He addressed the audience, his voice smooth and steady, amplified by the microphone. There seems to be a misunderstanding regarding ownership," he began, a faint, dangerous smile playing on his lips. "So, let's take a moment to clarify some things." He nodded to Mr. Choi, who was standing by a laptop connected to the main screen. The breathtaking rendering of the Sunhua beacon vanished, replaced by a dry corporate document. It was the deed of sale for the architectural firm where Marcus was a senior partner. The new owner, effective 3 weeks ago, a subsidiary holding company of the Sunhua Group. "As of last month," Jinwoo explained calmly, "I am the majority owner of Thorne & Associates, which means, technically, any work Mr. Thorne has done recently, he has done for me." Marcus's face went white. The screen changed again. A portfolio of debt. His mortgage, his car loans, his massive gambling debts from a private club in Macau. All of them had been bought up, consolidated under a single financial entity. An entity owned by Jinwoo. "I am also his banker," Jinwoo continued, his voice relentlessly pleasant. "And I must say, his financial situation is precarious." Another image flashed on the screen, the cover of a prestigious architectural journal which was set to publish a glowing feature on Marcus and the Skyline Apex Tower. Then, a series of internal emails appeared alongside it, emails between the journal's editor-in-chief and Jinwoo. The feature had been canceled. In its place would be a 10-page exposé on Marcus's history of plagiarism, complete with sworn affidavits from former colleagues and junior architects, including Anya. The final email was a confirmation. The journal's parent publishing house had been acquired by Sunhua Media 2 days ago. "And I am his publisher," Jinwoo said, the final nail in the coffin. Or, more accurately, The man who will now ensure his name is never published in a reputable journal again. Jinwoo took a step forward, his eyes locking with Marcus's. He finally addressed him directly, his voice dropping to a low, conversational tone that was somehow more terrifying than a shout. You came here claiming ownership. But you own nothing, Marcus. The firm you work for, the apartment you sleep in, the money you owe, the reputation you so desperately crave. It all belongs to me. You are a guest in my world, and your visit is over. The world did not just collapse for Marcus. It was unwritten. It was erased. The structure of his life, which he thought was made of concrete and steel, was revealed to be nothing but a digital projection on a screen. And Jinwoo had just turned off the projector. He stared, his mouth agape, his mind utterly broken by the sheer systemic totality of his ruin. The arrogance, the bluster, the rage, it all drained out of him, leaving a pathetic, trembling husk. He dropped to his knees. A sound, a raw, wounded animal keen, escaped his lips. He began to sob, great, racking sobs of a man who has lost not just his future, but his past as well. The security men finally moved in, lifting him gently, almost pitifully, to his feet, and guiding his boneless form out of the hall. The only sound was the frantic clicking of 100 cameras, capturing the absolute and public downfall of Marcus Thorne. In the ensuing silence, Jinwoo turned back to the audience, his composure perfect. He gestured to the woman standing beside him, her expression serene, her posture regal. Allow me to reintroduce the sole architect and visionary behind the Sunhua Beacon, he announced, his voice ringing with pride and authority. A talent who has been the most capable person in every room she has ever been in, and whose name you will now all know. This is Alara Vance. He stepped back, ceding the stage, the light, the entire moment to her. The applause started as a trickle, then grew into a roar, a wave of validation and acclaim that washed over her. She looked out at the sea of faces, at the flashing lights, and she felt not fear or anxiety, but a profound, quiet sense of rightness, of being correctly placed. The weight of the past, the years of silent suffering and stolen credit, finally lifted, dissipating like smoke in the bright, clear air of her new reality. She had not been given a voice. She had simply been given a microphone loud enough for the world to hear the voice she'd had all along. Later that night, long after the last of the reporters had left and the congratulations had faded, she stood with Jinwoo on the private balcony of the penthouse. The city sprawled before them, a tapestry of light and shadow. The cool night air felt clean, fresh. She leaned against the railing, a slow, genuine smile reaching her eyes for what felt like the first time in a decade. It was the smile of a survivor, but more than that, it was the smile of a victor. He seems warm, Jinwoo's mother had once said, a wry observation about her son's cold exterior. Alara thought about that now. He was not warm in the conventional sense. He was not a sun. He was gravity, a steady, unyielding force that had pulled her out of a dying orbit and into a new, stable one. He had reordered her universe not with heat, but with mass. What happens now? She asked, her voice quiet. Now, he said, turning to stand beside her, his shoulder almost touching hers, you build your tower. It was that simple. The drama was over. The past had been cauterized. All that remained was the work, the future. He wasn't offering her a fairy tale. He wasn't promising a life without complication. He was offering her a partnership, a foundation upon which she could build anything she wanted. And what about you? She pressed gently. What do you do now? He looked out at the city, at the thousands of buildings that made up its heart. I watch you work, he said, the ghost of a smile on his lips. And I handle the complications. She understood. Theirs would not be a relationship of grand passions and loud declarations. It would be one of quiet support, of shared purpose, of two formidable people standing side by side, watching over the city they were about to change forever. It would be a family built not on romance, but on honesty, on complexity, and on the daily, deliberate choice to stay. He reached out, not to touch her face or her hand, but to gently adjust the collar of her dress, a small, precise gesture of care. His fingers brushed her skin for a fraction of a second, a spark of warmth in the cool night. It was more intimate than any kiss. It was a gesture of seeing, of tending to a small detail no one else would notice. She did not pull away. She leaned into the quiet space between them, a space that was no longer empty, but filled with a sense of profound and abiding peace. The kind of peace that comes after the war is over. The kind of peace you build, one precisely placed stone at a time. The tower was waiting. And for the first time, Ilara Vance was truly free to build it, her way, with her name etched into the sky.